Today is the 17th day of December 2014, and I'm most happy to welcome an old friend, Aravinda Maheshwari.
Thank you for inviting, Narad.
We always like to begin with asking about how you came to know of Mother and Sri Aurobindo, and perhaps your family also. Can you tell us a bit
Sure.
about the background?
My father was in contact with the ashram and with the mother from early 1950s. He was himself a philosophy professor, and I believe he must have read Sri Aurobindo's books right from the time I was born or even before. And I think it was in 1951 or 52 that his first visit to ashram took place. He came and saw the mother.
But he never met Sri Aurobindo.
No, Sri Aurobindo had left his body by then. And it was a life-changing experience for him. In our family, we got introduced to Mother and Sri Aurobindo, but with more the stories of their childhood. And in our growing up, they were dear figures, they were close to us, but it's not the Mother and Sri Aurobindo as we got to know later on. We were children introduced with children's stories, so he had his contact, and I wouldn't say I was in close contact with all the teachings of Mother and Sri Aurobindo before I came here.
And when did you come?
It was in 1968. It was, I had done my, what they call intermediate college at that time. And after the exams were over, my father, who had come here several times in between, just, I don't remember the exact conversation, but he sort of said, would you like to visit the ashram now during the vacation time after the exams? And I was happy to do that, and so everything was arranged, and I was put on the train, 16 and a half years old, by myself. And that time it was not the journey like it is now. It was much longer train ride up to Chennai. I have no memory how I changed in Chennai from train to bus. I don't remember that actively.
What month was it?
It was the month of June, just, it was a hot month.
So Auroville had already been inaugurated.
It was, and in fact, my father and my elder sister had come for the inauguration. They had come there, but at that time, my situation was in school and getting close to exams, so there was no question. But my elder sister, Chinmayi, and my father, they were there at the inauguration. In fact, even in 67, as you might remember, there were 3 darshans, one after the other. There was the 24th of April, that's regular every year. Then there was 4, 5, 6, 7, the date. And that was a darshan. So it happened close by. And there was a third in between for some, I think a big group visiting from somewhere. So they knew about it, they had come at that time for those 3 darshans together. And the same thing happened also in 1968. There was a 21st of February darshan, then 28th for the school
and 29th.
And 29th.
Yes.
So they were there for that occasion. But I came in June.
I remember 4, 5, 6, 7 because Mother said children born after that date would be very special.
I think what I remember also reading several messages that it is in 68 and from beginning of 68 around that time that Mother speaks of the supramental light coming down in the physical, the consciousness. And I think if one looks sort of deeply into the world movements from that time, one can see a very different dynamics happening, not always understood by the surface consciousness, but for those of us who are fortunate to kind of see it in that perspective, things have been so much changed from
Yes.
from that time, and ever more so now.
Yes. So you're 16 and a half and you're getting on a bus to come to Pondicherry.
Getting on, as I told you, I
You
don't
don't remember
but
that.
I do remember getting off the bus
Ah.
in Pondicherry bus station, and I was told to carry one of those Ashram Hindi magazine in my hand for the person receiving to recognize who this boy would be.
Mhm.
So it was Purodha. It was a Hindi magazine published at that time. Aravinda ji was the editor, and Chandradeep ji, you might have memories of him or not, but most of the old ashramites know him. He was one of the earliest Hindi-speaking person from, I think he was from Madhya Pradesh or south of Uttar Pradesh, anyway, very Hindi-speaking, who has been living here from, I do not know, 50s or even earlier, and has done major translations of Sri Aurobindo's works in Hindi. So he was a contact person for my father and a personal friend of him. So it was arranged that Chandradeep ji will come and receive me at the bus station. So I was holding the Purodha in my hand, came down, and there was this wonderful energy of an elderly gentleman in his dhoti and a smiling face welcoming me. And from that time to the point of departure, those 15 days was like months' time in the experience. It was like within hours or days I felt like, yes, here it was, this was my home. Everything felt so familiar, and I wouldn't say that I had really seen pictures of Samadhi and ashram and all that, but everywhere I was brought, it was just yes, that was it. I was totally at home.
Where were you staying?
With Chandradeep ji's.
So you had 2 weeks?
Yes.
Roughly?
It was 2 weeks here, and as I said, those 2 weeks were like, there's just no count of time. Every day, every hour was just in this atmosphere. And as you can remember, 1968 ashram, you can't imagine it now if you look at it.
No.
The Pondicherry was a different city. In the month of June, it's like utter peace. There's just
Yes.
no crowds. There are no buses traveling around here. There is few cycles in front of ashram.
Almost no motorcycle.
Hardly any
No.
motorcycle, and cars you see maybe once in few days.
Yes.
And in that peace, coming to ashram, being in the samadhi, taking the time, visiting other places, but that visiting and what you see these days happening visiting, it's like people are rushing. They have to see this, they have to see that, they have to see that. And it's a bit of a tourist hunt, a bit of a, like looking at things. At that time, you didn't look at things. You felt the atmosphere. You saw the samadhi, and you looked at people, but you looked at the vibrations.
Yeah. And you felt.
It's like hearing the music all the time,
Yes.
and you feel it. And it's not that, okay, I'm 16 years old, I'm too young to notice that. It was just so strong, so beautiful. And maybe because I was young, I could just drown myself in it without anything.
We were immersed in it.
Yeah, exactly.
When did you first go to Mother?
Well, it was in those 2 weeks, I saw places, then school was next thing, and I met Kirit Bhai, and he talked to me so affectionately, and just, it was not going to say, okay, can I have admission? No, I was just going to see Kirit Bhai. He was there, again, an elder who takes me like almost in his arms without physically, and explains to me about the Ashram School and all that. And without my active memory of coming with a question and answer list, I get to know that yes, there is a possibility I could join the school. And then he even asked me to read certain passage from Aurobindo's text. And after that he tells me, look, you will have to work a little bit on your English. Until then, my education was, main language was Hindi, although we had learned English. And some subjects like mathematics and all that, we were using English, but English was not a spoken language for me. English was one of the studied languages, but at the level where in north of India at that age people would do,
Yeah.
which is so he was very aware, and he told me that you'll have to work on the English, but it was so much loving and so embracing. And I think either I filled out or I brought home and then mailed back the application forms. I don't have the clear memory of those details. But as I said, days were like eternities. And came about maybe a week later, and I was speaking to Chandradeep ji and others, and I said, what about seeing Mother? Now there is no darshan. And I was told, this is, Mother can only see people when it is their birthday. You don't go otherwise.
Yeah.
That's the...
This was 68, of course.
This was 68. An hour passed, a day passed, and inside me it would just keep coming back. Mother, I would like to see you. And so ultimately I just decided, I took a little piece of paper, one simple sentence or something like that. Mother, here I am. I feel you in my heart, but my body would like to come and touch your feet. Something of that. And I brought it to Nalinida, and I think the day after I was called 2 days later to come at 10:30. So...
Was there a group, or were you alone?
No, I think it was birthday people probably were there.
Ah, yes, yes.
And so I was told where to go, and I was given some flowers by Shashi Di was living with Chandradeep ji and Nitya Prakash. They were kind of the youngsters, sort of my age. They were like my brother and sister at that time. So, well prepared, and we came and sat in that, they call the lower room where Champurlal used to come and call, and call came and called me upstairs and went and entered the room, turned left, Mother was sitting on her couch. I sort of remember approaching and sitting in front of her, but from that time to coming out, it was like an infinity of love and light. There was hardly any physical action, memory, form. Yes, at some point I had my hands and I put my head on her feet and I felt her hand on my head. But I do not know whether it was 30 seconds, whether it was what it was. It's just there is no time there. And and there were eyes that, just like an infinity of love and light, all embracing. So from there, coming out, getting up, being at Samadhi, reaching home, and totally immersed in that love. I think, I don't know, some hours later or something, Shashi Di was asking how it was and all that, and then she said, And did she look at you? And what was she wearing? I said, I don't know. I can't say what she was wearing. It was just her eyes. Those eyes that were like, embracing the whole world. And there was nothing beyond those eyes. That's it. So here I was fortunate in those 2 weeks to have to.
And then you had to go back.
The ticket was there, and it was not sure when the decision would be made about the admission to the school.
Mm-hmm.
So I went back and reached Mathura, no problems. And then not knowing whether I'll be admitted or not, because the education system in the north and everywhere else starts in July the next year, where here starts in December. So I went back and then I had already applied, and I joined the Banaras University for the bachelor's. In November I got a note that I have the admission here in the Ashram School. So from I think the note came to Mathura, so I got a call from my father that the admission to Ashram School has happened. So just, all full of happiness, and I think it was just before the Deepavali vacations, came home and packed up and reached here on 10th of December, I believe, in 1968, to start the school on the 16th. So all that happened in 6 months' time.
Now, were you put in boarding?
Yes, I was in boarding. It was what they call big boys boarding.
Mm-hmm.
Krishna Bhai was our boarding in charge, and many of our boarding mates and even roommates. We had the biggest room in the boarding with 4 of us sharing a room, and I think it was like a total new family. Within no time, we were so close to each other, and such a happy family. And being a big boys boarding, it was the farthest one. The Bikabai cycle department, I think it was the one street after, and reaching all the way down to the West Boulevard.
Oh.
That's where a 3-story house was there, in which we had the 2nd and 3rd story. On the ground story, the owners lived there. So that was the big boys boarding with maybe 15, 16 of us. So big boys meaning, I think not all were in higher course. Some were also in the senior classes of the school. So there we were.
Did you partake of the free progress system at that time?
Free progress system, of course, in school most of it was getting towards that. Probably there was a mixture, but the age at which I came and also the education I had, I was asked to join straight away higher course. So in that sense, I did not go through EAVP and other part. I was straight away at the library. That was the higher course at that time. There was no knowledge until I finished. Although the building was getting built up in 71 and I think 70 and 71. They finished the building, I think the year after I had finished the higher course, which was in October 1971.
No, people are always interested to hear about your teachers, your favorite teachers, teachers in general.
Jugalda is foremost, and there also I have such a fond memory. Being new to the Ashram School and new to the system, coming straight from the north, not English being my first language. The very first day of school, Jugalda sort of took me on, and it was, again, those details and those conversations I don't have, but the feeling was come my dear child, and here we sit and we will read Savitri. So with Jugalda, it was Savitri, and then a few days later also Life Divine. So we read Savitri and Life Divine, sort of alternate, every day, first period with Jugalda. And
What other
because
teachers?
he was sort of the overall in charge, often he had things to do in the school, so he would not be there at 4:45, sometimes at 8 o'clock or 5 to 8 or something like that. I would sit there from 4:45 and I will be reading on my own. He will come at some point. We will go through some passages that either he will ask me to read or I will have questions for him. And that was every day starting knowledge. And it sort of it was like catching up on everything that I had missed in the ashram schooling, English as well as Aurovindo's teaching and mother. So that was Jugalda. Then Aratidi. She was like my mother teacher. She took me in my arms, and she was my French teacher. And there also, I think it was every day, as far as I remember. Maybe later on, it became more separated. But right from the basics, again with more than teacher, it was like mother's love. Like a mother teaching her child French. Right from the scratch, I didn't know a word of French. But that, and then later on, I do not know if it was the first year itself or the next year, Mrityunjaya also was teaching us French. And with him started reading more and more and more. But somehow, and I cannot explain it, and I think by trying to explain probably it'll take away from the deepest meaning of what it was. But later on I often used to say my mother tongue is French, because it was the language of the mother. She was my mother. So my mother's language is French. And I loved it with that same love as mother tongue. Incidentally, French grammar has a lot of similarities with Hindi. And you cannot believe, if you take French grammar and try to explain to an English person, he would have a hard time for many of the details. Translate them into Hindi, they go absolutely parallel. So I had in that way, a basic on which it was just flowing very easily. So I love French, and although I'm far from being, how shall I say, an expert in that, I love it like my mother tongue.
Did you have an opportunity to study with Kirit?
Yes, that was also quite an interesting thing. Kirit Bhai was the philosophy professor, and there used to be lineup of students every day waiting for him to come for the 1 or 2 hours that he could come. He had a fixed place, the very first big desk. I don't remember exactly his time. He came sometime in the morning, and he had an hour and a half every day. And there was not with students a period with Kirit Bhai. You didn't have, like 50 minutes with Kirit Bhai and all that. Everybody was on reading something, they are doing something. They would, come, ask the questions he had, get the answers, get his advice, move on, the next students come. So that was how it happened. So one day I approached him and I said, Kirit Bhai, I would like to learn philosophy. Also, my father was a philosophy professor, but I had not learned any philosophy till then. Kirit Bhai said, it'll be good to start with an essential question that you have, that you once answered in the way. So I went and thought about it, and I came back to him and I said, I would like to know what is time. That was my question. So he gave me passages from different works of Sri Aurobindo, marked out from this book, this passage, this book, this passage. You read all those and then you come back and ask what you feel and what you have next question. So here I was reading through all those passages. It must have been few months past my initial time, because at that time I could start following English. It was not like a huge effort, although time and again there will be words that I didn't know and I would have to look in the dictionary and find out meanings. But speaking every day English, doing everything in English, English was flowing at that point. So I went through those passages, learned a lot about Sri Aurobindo's explanation of time, and things in time, and things beyond time, and timelessness. And it was a lot of knowledge, a lot of spoken, written knowledge, which I would say in language made a sense, but I had not the experience of what was said. And so I think, I don't remember how, in what words I explained it to Kirit Bhai, but what I sort of can re-explain it with anybody now is that I said to myself, once I can experience what has been taught to me or learned, then I will go for the next question. It's no point in for me just asking questions, getting answers that are not experienced. So, in a way, maybe now one can say intellectual pursuit was not my passion. It was living experience. So, in that sense, I had sort of had a wonderful time, and Kirit Bhai is still very, very dear to me, and in his all these years, and especially towards the end, we had a very, very close contact. But I didn't study philosophy with him anymore, because for me, the teaching had to go with the experience. So my philosophy would go only as far as my experience go, and not but on that same line, I think it was already starting to happen a little bit with Savitri, but then we started with Temi Ben, Sri Aurobindo's poems. And I believe probably it was my second year. I joined a group of students, a class with Temi Ben. Once a week or twice a week, one period. And she would choose poems, she would read, she would speak about those poems. And sometimes she would ask us to read some things by ourselves, come back and more. But it was mostly reading, listening to her. Sometimes she would ask us to read. And through poems, it was going into experience. That was like an open channel where it was not the intellect trying to understand things. It was an experience that was there. And I'm using words now that may sound a bit, big and presumptuous and all those things. And there was not all that even thinking in my mind at that time, oh, I'm having experiences. Nothing of that. It was just something that was flowing in. And it was enjoyable, it was lovely, it was bringing me to, one can say, a closer, intimate contact with Sri Aurobindo. It was just like bathing in his light, in his love.
Did you study Savitri with her?
We had also at the same time a class also with her.
Was Gita in that class?
Gita Dolia?
Mm.
I don't think so, because I think Gita Dolia came to higher course after I had left.
She's prepared a whole book on Temi's Savitri.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's almost complete.
Well, then I would, because we were not in the same class, it was another batch. And later on also, I know there were more and more batches, like even the teachers group was going to Temi Ben for years together, learning Savitri. Although after my higher course, I could not join that group because of my work at the press and group activities and other things. But Temi Ben also, I mean, such a sweet, such a sweet personality, so subtle. Even her voice, you remember that? I mean, only pin drop silence would make us actually follow everything she was saying. But in that and through that delicate, sweet voice, sometimes speaking with her eyes closed, she would transmit the depth of the experience, whether it is, or the beauty of the poem, or things like that. So here we were with Temi Ben now in two classes. One was Savitri class and one was the poems class, getting more time. And so these things just kept, growing and growing, and I was immersing myself more and more in that. And that was, of course, with French then very quickly we started reading Mothers, Entretien and Prayers and Meditation. So there again it was just like oceans of happiness, oceans of light.
Well, I have so much more to ask you, but I would like to ask you, when did you next see Mother? At Terrace Darshan? Or did you go personally?
The next 4 times was February, April, December and November, the Terrace Darshans in 1969, 4 of them.
Yes.
I was in the school. And the next one, of course, my birthday in December. So that was the next one, to her room. So I have been to her room, counting the first visit in June, I think total 6 or 7 times in those span of 5 years.
Those birthdays?
4 birthdays.
4 birthdays.
Once before birthday in June, which is, I call it that's my rebirth day. That was a new birth. And then also, once there was, I think twice, the first December performance team would visit her. So with that whole group, I had gone there twice in those years, even after higher course, up to 72. And then one extra visit was on the 31st of October 1971, the last day of the school. And I think it was that day morning or the day before, whether it was Jugalda or Kirit Bhai who had told me, tomorrow you are going to the Mother. And she received me and gave me the best student prize for that year.
Oh,
Yeah.
beautiful.
1971. So that was.
So you did some acting also.
Oh, a lot of acting. That was right from the beginning.
Tell us about that.
But just before that, I
Yes.
don't want to say that among my teachers, Yamuna Ben, who was teaching Tamil, very, very close. Again, another kind of elder sister, mother figure. Mrityunjaya, I told, learning French. Vijay Lakshmi, physics teacher. She was also like a big sister, always very, very loving. Vijay Bhotse, I believe is her name. Vijay Bhai used to call him. Because I didn't know French enough, and that time mathematics was taught in the Ashram School in French. He came specially to follow up mathematics with me in English, because I had already advanced quite a lot in mathematics, and so we tried advanced mathematics with him. I think we did 1 year, and then I said, okay, that's kind of enough of this abstract math.
So what were your favorite subjects?
As I say, in the beginning it was physics and mathematics, but physics and mathematics, while they remained favorite, oh yeah, and father of Rosdi, Pratap Sen. Do you remember him? He was the mathematics teacher for engineering students, doing that in English, because their engineering class was all in English. So I was asked to join that class also because something was there. And I had lovely time there because it was more or less things I had already done in my high school and intermediate. So that was like just an ice cream class for me. That was so wonderful. But there also Pratap Da, oh my goodness, such a wonderful memories of him. So these are kind of, and of course I have done one session of chemistry with Joshi Bhai.
Oh.
Wonderful, wonderful. And he was, through all these teachers, and whether we learned with them or so many other teachers that we just met and conversed here and there, that sort of made the school what it is. It was not the building, it is not that it is in Pondicherry. It was the way of teaching, the way the teachers interacted with students and everything. The way everything was referred to mother. She was the guiding light. And so everything was, that was the beauty of the Ashram School. Those 3 short years, but 3 long years, it's like a lifelong experience. And even in the later years, there were many occasions where I felt that what I had missed as being a child here, I was being given through this activity or that activity or this experience or that opportunity to do something. And part of that was 3 years where through Suresh Joshi, a friend of ours, at one point there was a need, would you come for a night duty in the ashram? And I jumped, yes. So here I was, and then things happened that it started, but it never ended. So I was there every day at night, before 11 o'clock in the ashram, closing the door, doing whatever checkups were required to be done, and then having a cot, and anywhere in the courtyard near Samadhi or anywhere or in the reception room, I could sleep, would wake up around 3 o'clock, would clean up places, open the gate at 3:30 for the first batch of people coming in for the Samadhi flowers, and then do some sweeping in the courtyard, help them if whatever required, and at 4:30 open the ashram gate and be there at the gate up to 5 o'clock till the first reception people come. And that was for 3 years. So sleeping every day, near Samadhi, at Samadhi, doing things in the ashram. It was just like being day and night in Mother's and Aurobindo presence, like growing up again, and so wonderful.
Let us take a short break.